So my name's Rachel and I'm going to start doing some videos just to follow the journey of my treatment for borderline personality disorder. It was recently diagnosed last year and I just want to keep a progress of the journey, just so I can kind of look back on it, but also I want to share the videos to kind of see if it helps anybody else, because I always feel like listening to other people's stories can help. So a little about me. I'm now 30. However, in myself I've always felt like kind of off and kind of different, sort of since being a kid. I wasn't the kid that wanted to, sort of make friends with people. I was very emotional about particular things, and a lot of people didn't understand. I was sometimes the difficult child, and I always felt like I wasn't quite in the circle with people, never so much as an outsider, but I always felt I wasn't quite the same. Other children, they were always, wanting to, it was all about making friends, whereas, that wasn't my thing. I was very particular, argumentative over, a very strong belief, what was right and wrong, and I would, if something was unjust, I couldn't let it go. About that, and I've been at the time, probably around 13 is when at high school I sort of felt more and more of an outsider, that I wasn't the same as other girls. They were very much into sort of making friends, trying to get boyfriends, all of that, and I always felt like I just couldn't relate to them. Not that I was different, not that I knew I was different, it's just it was almost like I felt they were a whole other, not species, but whatever everyone else seemed to want, I didn't have that. And then because I knew I was different, and I started getting bullied around about sort of 12, 13, and I started self-harming about 13, and I did take a overdose at 13, tablets at school, which I then did get sent a child counsellor, but again I couldn't relate to him. I don't really remember much about it, and it's just kind of got sort of not even officially diagnosed, but it was it's probably just depression, it's probably just a phase. But sort of since then, I've been self-harming since about 13, and I've always kind of been that way. Growing up, I never felt I never felt I could relate to anyone, and I was always worried, sometimes paranoid about stuff, and just massive mood swings. And when I say mood swings, I don't mean I'll just go off in a huff for a few hours. I've always the different moods could really fluctuate, kind of within minutes of each other. One, I could be, happy, everything's going fine, and then literally 10 minutes later I'm crying because of how much I want to die. Stuff like that, and there was never a real cause for it. It just, out of the blue, and that had been ongoing, all kind of throughout my adult life as well. And again, it was consistently diagnosed as depression, but it always didn't quite feel right, because so like, I could be crying about how much I want to die, and then sort of 2 hours later I'm making plans to go on holiday, I'm making plans to go meet my friends, and yeah, there was something, it didn't kind of feel right, and like, but I wasn't aware of anything else it could be, so I always kind of believed it was depression. A couple of times, like, if I was feeling depressed or suicidal, I'd call the doctors, make an appointment. I'll be like, I'll come in a few days, but then a few days later, I might have been fine again. I was like, oh, it's nothing, and I'd cancel the appointments. However, it was like during kind of lockdown, the behaviour and feelings were just getting not worse but more extreme. For example, like, 1 minute I'd be like, oh, I'm off work, I'm enjoying this, taking the dog on the mandatory walk, and then literally like minutes later, as soon as I got back in the house, I'd be crying and I'm just thinking about how much I wanted to die all of the time. And yeah, as I said, the sort of mood swings, they were getting more extreme, and that's when I started kind of trying to do a bit like research into like different mental health issues, because that was when I was like, it's more than depression. Because when I read about depression, it was very much you kind of consistently feel bleak, and that can go on like for days. It's more like it's like consistently low, and so for example, if you're feeling like low, it's kind of say if that's like baseline where you feel okay, it was kind of describing like depression was like kind of consistent like this, whereas how I was feeling, it was very constantly, not for a few hours, not for a few days, it was changing within minutes of each other, and it was very hard to keep track of. So that's when I started doing a bit more research, did go to see the GP, could this be bipolar because of the ups and downs. And I am very lucky that I do have a good GP. He's a very good doctor. He, whatever you go for in the past, the first question he's always asked is, how are you feeling? How are you doing? And like, he listened to everything that, I sort of said to him, all the symptoms that I could think of over the years. And at the time I was a bit disappointed, because he said, he listened to what I said, and he was like, I know, and he said to me, he's like, I know you've queried it might be bipolar, but listen to you, I don't know. He's like, I'm not sure, I can't give a diagnosis, but, and I think this is an important bit, but he said he was gonna research what I'd said to him and have a look at it further, because he didn't want to like just, I knew he wasn't going to brush it off, but he didn't want to jump to conclusions. And I think within about 2 weeks he referred me to mental health services, and had a couple of telephone appointments, because obviously it's through the pandemic. And then it was around this time last year, and then sort of by the end of June I went for a face-to-face appointment with one of their psychiatrists, and then in July I got the diagnosis of the borderline personality disorder. And the reason I remember her explaining to me why she thought it was that over bipolar is because of the quick natureness of the changes in mood. She said, like, if it was bipolar, it's usually, you're up for a week or so, then you're down for a week or so, and it's more of a slow cycle. Whereas the borderline personality disorder, one of the main symptoms of it is how quick you cycle. So yeah, that's kind of like just an introduction, and it's kind of hard having a diagnosis because I know a lot of people feel like a kind of relief, if it's an explanation of why they felt wrong. But for me personally, sometimes it's a relief, but sometimes there is a lot of denial because I personally don't feel wrong. I've felt like this when I was about 13. I'm 30 now, so I felt like this for about 17 years, and to me this is normal. But I have been referred to start BPD therapy, which is dialectal behaviour theory, and I've been to 2 what they call commitment sessions, where you kind of go along, see what it's about, meet other people, because they do it in groups. And at first, I'm in this room and there's like 5 other people, and I'm just like, I don't know why I'm here, because I do not relate to these people. But then as conversations started, and you hear that people have the same symptoms and behaviours, and when you're hearing it off other people, you're like, ooh, that sounds awful, and then it's dawned on me, oh, that is actually me. So yeah, I had the commitment sessions a few weeks ago, and the actual therapy starts on the 27th of May. So I wanted to keep this diary, well, not really a diary, but kind of a video to kind of see what's out there. It might not be new news, because I've had a look for other people's videos, and I see a lot of people, they've done kind of one video, but then their channel's mainly about what they bought from Primark, what makeup they're wearing, what sandwich they're having. And I want this one to be just a bit more talking about, kind of how the therapy goes. As I said, mainly, just for a record, and, see if it helps anyone else.